Hello, Epic friends. Welcome back for another reading in the book of Genesis. Grab your Bible, grab your comma journal and a pen so that you can take some notes and write down some of those different aspects of comma that you think about as you're reading or listening as we read this together. Quick Start Guide will give you those helpful tips and hints. There's also a video up above, and we'll go over it at the end of this video as well. But let's get started reading. Go ahead and hit pause if you need to find your place in your Bible. We are going to be reading chapter 41, starting at verse 41. All right, hit pause if you need to, and we're going to get started. Joseph in charge of Egypt. That's the theme of this passage. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command. And people shouted before him, make way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift hand or foot in all Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zaphenath-Paneah, and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, it is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. The second son he named Ephraim and said, it is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, go to Joseph and do what he tells you. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. All right. Take a look at your comma quick start guide. Go back and reread that and consider all that Joseph has been through from the very beginning to now. But take a look at comma. It's a different way that you can engage in this chapter and in this verse, in these verses, and just think about it a little bit differently. Use the comma quick start guide. If you understand this and know this, go ahead and skip on to the next reading. Otherwise, you can stay tuned here. All the letters and commas stand for a way that you can engage in this chapter. The C stands for context, what's happening at the time this book was written. The O is observations, what do you see? And look at treats without the vowels, TRTS. And so the T stands for the theme of the passage. And this one was Joseph in charge of Egypt. That's a big bold heading at the top of the passage. The R is repeating words or phrases. There were a couple of those in there. So go back and highlight those or underline those. That second T is truths about God. Does the passage tell you about God? And then the S is something striking, something that stood out to you, that was surprising to you, or makes you wonder or think. That first M in comma is message. What does God say? So put on your specs to take a closer look at that. And the SPECS in specs, S is sin to confess. The P, is there a promise to claim in this passage? The E, is there example to follow? And then the C, is there a command to obey that God has given? And then S, statement about God. Is there something true about God that you learned after reading this passage? The M in comma, that second M is meditation. Take a minute, think about those things, write them down in your journal, listen to some worship music as you think, or just sit quietly And then that A, income, is the most important application. And so that is, how are you going to apply what you just read to your life today, how you're living? Because the Bible is written for you today. And so what are you going to do? And so if you need help thinking about those things or talking those through, we are here for you. And we look forward to hearing from you. All right, see you tomorrow.